We're talking today about a problem that, well, it keeps global health officials awake at night: antibiotic resistance in farming.
Yeah, it's huge.
We've sort of reached a point where the traditional tools, they're just not working as well, and the search for an alternative has led us somewhere, well, somewhere that sounds tiny, maybe a bit terrifying, but completely natural.
It's definitely an area of urgent global need, yeah.
And the answer we're diving into today, it does feel almost radical at first glance, using viruses to kill bacteria.
That's right. Welcome to the deep dive. We're examining the cutting edge of sustainable agri-food systems, and we're drawing heavily today on insights from the EU-funded Bee Trust project.
And that project is really interesting because it's not just about the science, is it? It's about the whole social side, how we adopt these high-tech but maybe unfamiliar solutions.
Exactly. And today, our focus is laser sharp: bacteriophages.
Okay, so for listeners who maybe haven't come across this term before, bacteriophages, or you'll hear us just say phages, they're basically highly specific viruses. They're everywhere in nature.
Pretty much water, soil, us. And they infect and kill only certain harmful bacteria. Now, what's really critical here is the contrast. You know, broad-spectrum antibiotics, they're like a carpet bomb, wipe out everything, good and bad.
Right.
Phages, though, they're specialists, true specialists.
The potential sounds revolutionary, especially for making livestock farming more sustainable. But, and this is the big but, it presents this massive psychological hurdle. How on earth do you convince a farmer, or you, the consumer, to willingly introduce a virus into the food production cycle?
That's the core question.
So our mission today is to explore this extraordinary scientific potential and, just as importantly, the profound challenge of public perception, earning trust. And we're using real insights here from farmers and consumers across Europe. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the basics, the mechanics. Why are phages being talked about as this great hope? Professor Damien Thury's research really highlights their incredible precision in animal health.
Yes, and what's fascinating is that specificity. That's the entire value proposition. We're talking about targeting really devastating bacterial infections in cattle, like mastitis, for example.
Which costs a fortune, right, and drives antibiotic use way up.
Billions, exactly. And phages can, in theory, knock out that specific pathogen without touching the animal's beneficial bacteria, the good stuff in their gut or on their skin.
So they don't mess up the animal's own microbiome.
Precisely. We often call them nature's precision tools for that reason. They don't cause harm to the host organism, only their specific target microbe.
Okay, that sounds like, well, a dream scenario. If they're so specific and so natural, why aren't they already standard practice everywhere?
Well, Professor Thury's is very clear. Phages are not a silver bullet. The barriers are actually immense.
Okay.
And the research suggests that the science itself, well, arguably that's the easiest part. The real hurdles are social, regulatory, and logistical.
Right.
If we look at the practical barriers, they kind of fall into maybe four main categories.
Okay, let's dig into those then. Maybe start with the regulatory uncertainty you mentioned.
Yeah, this is a major blocker. There's just no consensus, really, on how you classify a phage product. Is it a drug because it treats an illness?
Right.
Or maybe a feed additive if you give it orally? Or is it a food processing aid?
And each means a different set of rules.
Completely different, sometimes contradictory approval processes.
Yeah.
And that uncertainty, well, it kills investment and it slows adoption right down dramatically.
Yeah, I can absolutely see how that kind of bureaucratic knot could just stall things for years. Okay, but what about the product itself? If these are natural organisms, how do they actually hold up, out there on a real farm?
Good question. That brings us squarely to stability and scalability. Phages are essentially delicate biological things.
Right. Living organisms, sort of?
Exactly. They need to survive temperature swings, pretty harsh environments sometimes, long storage times. A farmer just can't worry that their potentially expensive phage product is going to degrade quickly sitting in a barn.
No, it needs to be robust.
We need robust formulations that ensure the product stays stable on all sorts of conditions. That's a huge area of ongoing research. And then there's the scale we need to produce billions, maybe trillions, of these tailor-made phages efficiently and cost-effectively.
Which needs specialized factories, I imagine.
Yeah, specialized infrastructure. It's not trivial.
Okay, it's clear that moving phages from the lab bench to the farm gate involves some enormous logistical shifts. Now let's try and connect this animal health application to the broader food chain. If phages are maybe reducing resistance in animals on the farm, what role could they play once that animal, say, enters the supply chain?
Yeah, that's a really essential transition to think about.
Yeah.
We see phages playing potentially a critical role in food safety after harvest. And this is where insights from Dr. Jerome Wooters at PhageGuard are particularly relevant.
Okay.
They're already formulating phages specifically to act as food safety agents, things to tackle pathogens like, say, listeria or salmonella that cause contamination and spoilage in food processing plants.
Ah, so we're moving from treating the cow itself to treating the meat or the factory surfaces.
Exactly. And what makes them potentially superior to some current sanitation methods in food processing?
Yeah, what's the advantage?
Well, their safety profile is pretty exceptional.
Yeah.
As we said, phages are already abundant in our environment, water, soil, even the mucus lining of our own intestines.
Okay.
So when they're applied in processing, they basically just seek out and destroy their specific target bacteria. They don't leave behind chemical residues. And crucially, they don't seem to alter the food's taste or texture or nutritional value.
That non-residue thing, that sounds like a big win.
It's a significant win, yeah,
Yeah.
for industry and for consumers potentially.
It does sound like a very elegant zero residue solution. But,
Yeah.
and I feel like this is the moment we hit the central conflict of this whole deep dive. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
We have this natural beneficial tool, but the public, well, many people perceive the word virus as basically synonymous with catastrophe.
And that intrinsic fear, it's understandable, isn't it? Especially given, recent history.
Absolutely.
For the vast majority of people, virus equals disease, illness, danger, full stop.
Yeah.
And the industry, the researchers, they just can't ignore that gut reaction or treat it like it's some irrational block.
I think maybe we should just pause here and acknowledge that perspective for you, the listener. We've spent years being, frankly, hyper-vigilant about microscopic threats. So how realistic is it to ask the public to just immediately embrace a benign virus?
It's not realistic at all. And that's precisely why communication is just paramount if we want to build legitimacy for this.
Right.
Dr. Wieters really emphasizes that transparency is completely non-negotiable. It's not enough just to say phages are safe. We have to use accessible science, clear language to show how they work, explain why they only target bacteria, and importantly, show real-life successful application stories.
So it's a battle of language and framing, almost as much as it is a battle against bacteria.
I think that's exactly right. It's about perception and trust.
Which brings us perfectly to the consumer trust gap. This was a major focus of the Bee Trust co-creation workshops, which Charlotte Boone summarized. And they started by recognizing something pretty fundamental.
Yeah, the fact that most participants, most ordinary citizens, had simply never even heard of bacteriophages before the workshops.
So complete blank slate for many.
Which means trust has to be built completely from the ground up. You're not just defending something people already know, you're introducing something entirely new.
And what happened when the science was explained? Did people just go, oh, okay, great?
Not exactly. What was fascinating was that the consumer questions immediately pivoted away from just the simple facts, and they went straight towards values. They weren't just asking, is this effective or is it safe?
They were asking deeper questions, like what's the moral motivation here?
Precisely that. Consumers wanted to understand the driving force. Is this purely a profit mechanism for some big corporation? Or is it genuinely focused on the public good, like tackling antibiotic resistance for all of us? They wanted to know who controls access, who controls the implementation.
Yeah.
And crucially, maybe given the history of tech fixes in agriculture, they asked, will this technology truly replace the need for antibiotics? Or is it just, another sticking plaster, another layer adding complexity to a system that already feels pretty opaque to most people?
Wow. Okay, so it sounds like that initial emotional response to an unknown virus quickly leads to deeper suspicion about the innovators and the whole system behind it.
That's a really good way to put it.
The lesson here seems to be that empathy and transparency about intentions, about the why, are maybe far more valuable than just reciting scientific data about how well it works.
Exactly. Trust is very rarely won by just an Excel sheet full of facts, is it?
No.
It's won by inclusion, by addressing those value-driven fears, head-on concerns about corporate control or hidden agendas or unintended consequences. This is really why the Bee Trust model champions this idea of co-creation.
Right. We've used that term co-creation a few times now. Just for the listener, what does that actually look like, tangibly, in a project like this?
Well, co-creation basically means that the stakeholders, so farmers, citizens, researchers, regulators, industry,
Right.
they're involved in shared decision-making, right from the earliest stages of development.
So not just presenting a finished product at the end.
No, exactly the opposite.
Mm.
Instead of science sort of handing down a finished product from on high, they run workshops, like the one Charlotte Boone described.
Mm-hmm.
Places where citizens can actually jointly assess the risks, discuss the benefits, and help define what responsible innovation actually means to them in their context.
So it ensures the technology hopefully meets real societal needs, not just technical specifications on a data sheet.
That's the goal, making it fit for purpose, socially as well as technically.
Okay, that structural inclusion feels like a really vital component. Now let's turn to the people on the front lines, the farmers themselves. Helene Imschut from Flanders of Food shared feedback from workshops specifically with agricultural producers. And it sounds like there was maybe cautious optimism.
Yes, I think that's a fair description.
Yeah.
Farmers are, generally speaking, highly motivated to find alternatives. They're facing immense pressure right now to reduce antibiotic use.
Yeah, the regulatory pressure is huge.
It is. So they're open to phages, but their openness is entirely conditional on the practical realities.
Okay, what were their most immediate sort of real-world concerns? What came up first?
Usability was number one. How easy will these phages actually be to administer on a busy farm? Is it some complex injection protocol? Or, ideally, can it be easily integrated into feed or water systems they already use?
Makes sense. What else?
Then there's support. Will there be enough training, enough veterinary support available, especially the early stages when things are new and maybe go wrong?
Crucial.
And finally, of course, the economics. What's the cost compared to antibiotics? And will the regulatory burden, the inevitable paperwork and tracking be manageable, or just another headache?
Wait a second. If farmers are already, as you say, struggling with regulatory compliance for existing stuff, how realistic is it to ask them to adopt an entirely new biological system?
No.
Especially one that sounds like it might require quite precise handling and stability.
Well, that's the absolute crux of the challenge, isn't it? The innovation must fit the context it's going into.
Right.
If the phage product is too fragile to store or way too expensive compared to the alternative, or requires loads of specialized training that just isn't easily available or affordable, well, it'll simply fail. It doesn't matter how brilliant the science is in the lab.
So it just won't get adopted.
Exactly. And this just reinforces that core finding from B-Trust again. Innovation has to be inclusive. Farmers have to be treated as active contributors, helping to design the delivery system, the practical application, not just being passive recipients of the basic science.
Okay. So what does this all mean then? We've looked at the science, the application, the perception.
No.
Where does that leave us?
Well, I think it's clear bacteriophages offer a really promising, targeted, and, importantly, completely natural tool. The potential for reducing antibiotic use and maybe even cleaning up parts of our food supply chain is immense. But their adoption is fundamentally a social, an economic, and a communication challenge. And right now, those challenges arguably overshadow the purely scientific hurdles.
And this connects right back to the bigger B-Trust objective, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Trust ultimately has to be seen as a co-created resource. It demands radical openness, it demands understanding the context, and it demands bringing everyone, regulators, researchers, industry, farmers, and the public together to define the future of a technology. Especially maybe when that technology involves confronting some really deeply held cultural associations or fears.
So here's a final thought for you to mull over. If the greatest barrier to using a potentially beneficial natural solution like phages is actually a deeply ingrained cultural association, that simple equation of virus equals danger, how can we, as a society, best reframe our relationship with the microbial world, especially in the pursuit of a genuinely sustainable food system? That's something worth thinking about long after this deep dive is done.